Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Truth in the Barrel. I'm Amy McGrath with Denver Riggleman. We have a lot to talk about today. Jimmy Kimmel being fired from ABC, along with the fallout from the Charlie Kirk murder last week. We're also talking about U.S. farmers and what's happening right now with them, along with a lot of other things to discuss. And Denver, how are you?
It's funny. I think I've had better years, but I'm feeling pretty good. As far as health wise and things like that. But I think what's happened over the last 24 to 48 hours, really since the Charlie Kirk murder, probably should sober anybody up, Amy, on where this country's headed.
Yeah, let's start there, Denver. Let's start with what just happened yesterday with Jimmy Kimmel, who is a longtime late night talk show host, is a comedian, I guess you would call him, and he was suspended by ABC for having some observations, saying some facts, some fact-based observations about the news and what's happening in our country. And I'll just kick it over to you, Denver, and give me your thoughts, and then I'll kind of try to tell you what mine are and what I think is happening.
Yeah, I think the Epstein Files must be really bad. I mean, that's the first thing. I always want to say that, but when you look at Jimmy Kimmel and what happened there, people want to talk about this false equivalency. You have a bunch of MAG individuals talking about people that were taken off the air that saying that that J6 was an inside job or COVID was fake. But the difference in this, when you have Jimmy Kimmel alluding to the fact that the shooter could be right wing, and when you listen to the comments, he actually doesn't come right out and say it, which is interesting. And you have saying, well, all these other people got taken off the air. My thoughts are this simply, and I'm going to roll fast because I don't think this is very complicated. Nexstar wants a merger and they need FCC approval. They capitulated again. We have oligarchs capitulating to make sure that they have these massive deals. Secondly, Brendan Carr of the FCC knows that it exceeds the mandate or the law of only 39% of households cannot be more than 39% of households cannot be reached by a specific television provider. That's to help with stopping with the actual arbitrary sort of conglomeration of opinions and ideas where you have one TV station controlling outputs. The FCC is thinking about actually doing away with that.
You summarized it pretty well. Let me slow it down a little bit because there's a lot you just threw at people. The FCC is a government agency, and obviously we have the Trump administration right now, and the head of that is a Trump appointee. When Jimmy Kimmel said whatever he said on late night, which didn't appear to be to me to be terrible words. He is a comedian, and people make and say lots of things in America. We have this thing called free speech, right? First Amendment. We lots of people say lots of things, and the FEC head denounced Kimmel and suggested that he be suspended. So he suggested to ABC that they suspend him and suggested to the local broadcasters who you mentioned, Nexstar, Sinclair, these local broadcasting companies, that they suspend Jimmy Kimmel. And so, and you also brought this up that Nexstar is trying to merge with another. They're in the process of over $1 billion, I think $6 billion
Six
deal.
point two billion, and I think it's
Thank you.
Tegna. Yes.
With a merger with another company, and they need folks to do that merger. They need FCC and FTC, that's the Federal Trade Commission, and the FCC, that's the Federal Communications Commission. They need their approval for that merger. And so what those companies are seeing is under the Trump administration, they're going to weaponize, they're already weaponizing the government. Okay. And to do what we want you to do, fire who we want you to fire. Do not talk about what we want you to not talk about in order for you to have these mergers, in order for you to continue with your business the way that you want to continue. And so that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing the media being weaponized, being almost taken over by federal government, because they're telling the media companies what to do here. And so they're using government to go after First Amendment speech. And that's bad. And it's kind of happening right in front of us.
The other difference, when the great thing about the ignorant is the use of false equivalencies. And when they talk about people being fired for deliberately lying or misleading people from a specific organization or group, what didn't happen was the Biden administration saying that they were going to pull FCC licenses. Brendan Carr threatened ABC with pulling their FCC license over Jimmy Kimmel, and they capitulated. And the reason ABC capitulated is because they're large stations who are also probably run by, I would say, oligarchs that are just greedy. They capitulated because of the FCC merger. So what you're saying is the government levers outside of any type of American constitutional way, right? We talk about American constitutionalists talking about getting rid of the Fed, right, Amy? Well, why the hell do we have the FCC? So if we want to go down that route, I'm happy to have that intellectual discussion with anybody. Why do you have anything? Why do you have any regulatory agency? If you can't, so now we have people who talk about freedom, picking and choosing which one they want to do. The other thing too is we didn't see Brendan Carr threatening Fox News over Kilmeade, saying that the homeless should literally be killed involuntarily. I'm to a point that, Amy, I don't know if I've ever been more pessimistic, but it also does help to see the battlefield, right? To clearly see what's happening. And I think that gives clarity on what needs to be done. And I will say that right now, and I've never said this in my life, that the 2026 elections may be the most important elections in my lifetime. And that's simply a midterm congressional push to see what happens. And if the Republicans keep the House based on gerrymandering or shenanigans or suppression of the vote, or disenfranchisement, or having ICE monitor lines, or trying to get rid of electric voting or electronic voting or mail-in ballots, I'm really, at that point, we have to look at the people who actually love freedom as being the resistance in this country.
Denver, there's a lot of other things happening right now that I want to get to. Okay. So, United States farmers right now are not okay. The tariffs are crushing the farms. We're seeing higher farm bankruptcies now, Denver, in the first 6 months of, actually 7 months, than we had in all of last year. And it's sort of a double, triple whammy that farmers are dealing with. They have higher costs for things like fertilizer and for equipment. Much of that is made over either brought in overseas, a lot of their farm equipment, or their fertilizer comes from Canada, some of it. And China's boycotting the soybeans, U.S. soybeans, which is a big export for farmers in that area. And they're dealing with catastrophic labor shortages due to crackdowns on immigrant workers. So there's a ton of uncertainty. And then you slap in the tariffs, and these farmers are just going bankrupt.
Past performance is indicative of future performance. Didn't Trump do this in his last term, Amy? And and
I
also
think it's
the other thing,
worse.
it's worse. It is. Well, everything's worse. The other thing too is, I think it's socialism for me, but not for thee. I think that's what we're looking at right now. And it's so funny. Again, these false equivalencies are not being able to see the forest for the trees, or the fact that what MAGA says, right, or what the far right says, is everything is socialism. Yet we have state-owned enterprises. We have the government taking pieces of massive corporations, and then that same corporation maybe getting TikTok. I mean,
Yeah.
I find my head explodes. I know we're talking about farmers, Amy, but we're talking about the same thing that we're talking about with Jimmy Kimmel, right? It's this false equivalency, inability to define what something is really, based on the fact that superstition, propaganda, and ignorance has completely metastasized across our entire landmass.
Well, what's
And
going to
that's
happen here, Denver? Is another bailout? Is that where
it's a
we're headed?
bailout. Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be part of the negotiations coming up. I really believe when you're talking about budget negotiations and things like that, first of all, you're going to have this bizarre thing where you're going to have farmer bailouts, but also the very fact that any negotiation is going to be tainted because of pocket rescissions. And I know that might be a whole nother topic, Amy, as we go down the line. But how are they going to? What is that negotiation going to look like? Because now Republicans, if they vote for a bailout of farmers, that means that they're deliberately saying that Trump's policies are broken. And that is such easy messaging for Democrats. I mean, that is almost like a hammer.
Trump 1.0, that trade thing that he pulled during the first administration, they had to bail out farmers, and guess what? We bailed out the farmers with taxpayer dollars. And when I talked to farmers back then, because I was running for office back then, I talked to farmers. They would say, "We don't want government handouts. We just don't want these tariff policies, so we can start." I mean, it's just you laugh, but it's like we're shooting ourselves in the foot here. We are causing a problem in which U.S. taxpayers are now going to have to pay more money to fix the problem that we caused. That's where we're at.
But you're going to have screaming, Amy, on things that don't matter, culture wars, all that, without actually looking at the root cause of any of this economic malaise, which is Trump's policies specifically. Um, Listen, it's hard, right? It's hard when you're sane. It's hard when you're rational. And, it's just even, this week, I think when you're looking at the Trump tariffs and you're looking at what happens to farmers and false equivalencies and farmers saying, hey, maybe just not have tariffs, as you said, Amy, which I think that's why you were a good candidate, right? You were able to sort of get to the crux of the matter, back then and do things, right? And say things that made sense. But sometimes making sense can be really bad if you're talking to a populace that's been radicalized under false equivalencies. And I think that's the big challenge. And I think that's what you're stating, right? It's a really big challenge when there's a deliberate cause and effect that's easily definable, and yet people refuse to see it.
I mean, farmers, they have to worry about the markets, they have to worry about the weather, they have to worry about drought. It's a kind of an uncertainty thing already. And then you tack on higher prices for fertilizer because of tariffs, higher prices for farm equipment that they
Equipment.
have to fix and buy. My husband's family is in the farm equipment business, so I've learned a lot more than I ever thought I would ever learn by just having this in the family. It is real, and then you tack on the idea that a lot of our farming, our products are exports, and a country like China boycotting that because of these stupid tariffs hurts our farmers. And so, and how does it matter to us, to just those of us who are not in the business of farming? Guess what? Your grocery prices, what are we seeing? They're going up. They're going up. So it's affecting all of us.
I've said before, Amy, and there's an exhaustion to it that stupidity is terminal. And, a lot of people also want to argue between evil and stupidity. The thing is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if somebody's just stupid, if what happens downstream has very negative consequences. Stupidity is just as bad as evil. And evil can sometimes be defined that way. And I think what we're seeing is just nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to realize it until really there's almost bottoming out of American society to a place that we can't recover from. And I don't want to get there. And I think, it's really brutal to me to see what's happening right now. And I think, again, it goes back to mobilizing for elections in 2026.
Yeah, totally. And I think that there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff we're talking about. We're going to be talking about Epstein. We're going to be talking about some of the things that this administration's doing, overseas and bombing fishermen now. And we're going to be talking about a lot of this other stuff, but this is something that hits home, right? And I just talked about agriculture equipment, and not all of our ag equipment comes from other countries. John Deere is a iconic American company, right? It's the nation's largest farm machinery ag equipment maker. It has said that that John Deere has stated that they are going to lose $600 million this year because of these tariffs. $600 million. We're shooting our own companies.
But then Trump can come in, bail out, and said he's the person who helps them, and farmers will vote for him again.
I don't know.
I don't either. I love that.
Where do you go from that? Where do you go from that? Let's talk about this kinetic strike on off the coast of Venezuela. This is apparently we know of two, because the Trump administration has talked about and released footage of two, but now the Trump administration is saying there's a third kinetic strike on a Venezuelan boat. There was one we know of on September 1st and September 15th. And these are U.S. forces, U.S. armed forces in international waters, destroying these speedboats, killing allegedly 14 drug dealers. That's what the administration says. And this is highly unusual, right? And it's not how drug cases are normally handled. They're normally handled by the U.S. Coast Guard, who regularly interdicts, boats and things off of our coasts. Sometimes we use it with the Navy's assistance. But maybe Doug can throw in the quote from Donald Trump where he says, "We're seeing that there are no ships in the ocean anymore. There are no boats. I wonder why. No drugs coming across. Probably stopping some fishermen too." To be honest, if I were a fisherman, I wouldn't want to go fishing either. Maybe they think I have drugs downstairs. Okay. So we'll play that clip.
There are no ships in the ocean anymore. We're seeing that there's like no ships, when the first one we went, there were hundreds of boats. Now there are no boats. I wonder why. Meaning no drugs are coming across, probably stopping some fishermen too. I mean, to be honest, if I were a fisherman, I wouldn't want to go fishing. Just a nice, let's take a little trip, because I'd say, man, maybe they think I have drugs downstairs. I don't want that. I think the fishing business has probably been hurt, but there are literally no boats. This was a boat, and we were surprised to see it.
And I listened to that, and I'm like, what? What, are we going after fishermen now?
I feel it's like the bloviations of senility. But it's also just this lawlessness, this brutishness, right? Of co-opting, normal people's hatred of drug dealers, right? Of cartels, of gangs. Obviously, but then what you do is there's this equivalency that then we just kill people. Well,
okay. Is this law enforcement or is this war?
It's
what are we doing here?
It's both. I think it's Epstein distraction. You're getting to a point, right, that look at what the media is going to flood the zone with. This morning I was watching ABC. Do you know what their primary story was on ABC this morning? ABC. Kimmel just left last night. I'm watching Good Morning America. Do you know what some of the primary things they were talking about this morning? Are you ready for this? By the way, summarily just killing people in boats and saying people shouldn't be fishing, Amy, wasn't one of them, right? Or Jimmy Kimmel feed looked off the air, right? Or executing the homeless, right? Or any of this that's happening. They were talking about bird feeders with camera feeds, Wi-Fi cameras, so you can watch the birds. And so
I like those actually, but I hear you. Maybe we have some more important things. I like those cameras. Call me an old lady.
I listen.
But I hear you.
But they were giggling about they were doing something on cooking, and I think there was never a time where they were approaching anything that had any substance whatsoever.
Mhm.
And again, you're so dead on about with what's happening. Is it law enforcement? Is it military? What's the backing for this? There's no proof, right? It's the same thing. It's always just trust us. This is literally,
Well,
distraction through death, and I think that's what we're having right now.
yeah, I mean, and lots of Americans want to tackle and get rid of the drug problem that we have
Of
because it's
course,
it's an important thing. And I can understand why people can say, well, it hasn't really worked in the past. Let's try a new tactic. And this is their new tactic, right? Marco Rubio saying, hey, in the past, it hasn't worked. And so what works is when you blow them up. That's when you get rid of them. That's what he said. Um, the
hmm
problem with using the military to do that is, first of all, we don't know who these people are. There were like 11 people in a speedboat. We're having the United States military drop bombs on them. And normally in the United States military, we this is an important concept I think people need to understand. We don't just use force whenever we feel like it. There has to be a legal basis for it. You have to be at war. It has to be in self-defense. And this isn't just the American Constitution and laws. This is international law. Okay. And what
yes,
the White House is saying is, well, it isn't in self-defense because these are drug dealers and they're going to be hurting Americans someday. Well, okay. It's not immediate. There's no immediate self-defense there. And so it's just this really huge gray
it's
area where a
awful.
lot of people are saying this is not legal. If these smugglers were wartime combatants, maybe you could go after them, but you can't execute them. Um, you need to arrest them and try them in a criminal court if they are committing a crime. This is sort of basic stuff here.
I mean, it is, and think about what we've talked about so far, right? We've talked about again, sort of government weaponization of false equivalencies, the utilization of propaganda, and appealing to people's basic instincts, right? Their most base instincts, and I think that's again, Amy, all this downstream flow of what's happening is a cascading effect from the administration and what they are, and the people that he's put in charge, right? Sycophants, people who believe crazy fantasy things. And when you have people that are already that flawed, you're going to have this effect of really bad things happening, not only to the American people, but to people globally. And then, since we're the bully in the fifth grade schoolyard that's been held back 3 times, people are very afraid to come at the bully. And it just feels that way. It just feels like, I mean, I always wanted to be the good guy. Now, I mean, are we the baddies? And that's what.
It's just un-American to go, executing people in international waters. It is just not.
Not a
It's
great
not
thing.
what we need to do. Now, drugs are killing Americans.
Amen.
78,000 Americans died in overdoses last year, not 300 million, which is what the president said. 78,000. It's still a lot. No doubt. But this chaotic approach is ineffective. It's wrong. And oh, by the way, the president pardoned all of these convicted drug kingpins. No one's talking about that. He pardoned these guys. He's freed a Mexican cartel head. He's pardoned the biggest drug kingpin in American history. And Republicans say nothing. He's pardoned violent criminals and murderers. He's purging the FBI and the DEA, taking away law enforcement who go after these drug smugglers in our country. He's
Yeah.
gutting those agencies because he's moving resources over to catch, I don't know, Uber drivers that have overstayed their visas. I mean, that's what he's doing right now. And so this idea that we want to tackle drugs, we absolutely do.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen in the next 3 years. And I think, again, that's why I think we need to brace for it getting much, much worse. I think our discussions, Amy, over the next year or so are really going to be about, is the rule of law completely gone? Does media control speech? What can we even say? I am not going to back down.
Well, I'm just a big proponent of the First Amendment,
That's
right?
exactly
I mean,
right.
and I feel like people need to be able to say freely that that's part of our fundamental rights as Americans. But you alluded to at the beginning of the show that the Epstein thing will not go away, right? We had
Right.
Kash Patel on Capitol Hill testifying.
Oh, man.
I think the whole thing, and I did not watch his testimony. I
Oh, I
actually have
watched a
better
lot of it.
things to do. But I think that what it does is it highlights the fact that these files are still being covered up. That this promise that the president made to release the files and ran his campaign on this, he is not doing. They're covering it up. Kash Patel has said he never spoke to the president about the files, and I mean, where are we here?
I think the word we're looking for is lies. I think another word, a good one, is cover up. I think another one, another few words, is Trump is in the Epstein files. I think another few words, I think it's incredibly incriminating. Circumstantially, I think it's brutal. I think we also know he's a longtime friend of Epstein. And of course, Kash Patel talked to Trump. Kash Patel is an inveterate liar. He's also a conspiracy theorist. So I think that's where we're at, is just simply we have an ignorant, unqualified, bizarre little man that's the FBI director. And I have rage about how he conducted himself, right, in Congress. And also, I'm absolutely flabbergasted that we didn't have senators that were a little better at cross-examining or asking questions instead of getting in shouting matches, which was, there's much better ways to eviscerate an idiot, right?
Yeah.
And then to get into that and to try to look that way because you want to run for president in 28. That doesn't endear you to me, right? It just means that you're a screamer like everybody else if you don't have the ability, right, to go back and forth in a way that hurts somebody without raising your voice, which is something I've tried to perfect over my life. And I think that's where we're at, Amy. I don't see any, I guess I don't see any way to pull most people that are already down the line back into sort of looking at this in a practical way. And when you're looking at Kash Patel, he has to protect the president on the Epstein files because he's a sycophant, because he doesn't care about the rule of law. He doesn't care about Americans. He simply cares about his own position.
Well, so this bill in the House that they're trying to get the correct number to say that they're, to the administration release the Epstein files. Even if it passes, I don't know
Nothing
that
happens.
that they will do anything.
He's going to invoke executive privilege and it's going to go to the Supreme Court. And that's, it was like, oh, Massey gets that last discharge petition signature. He's at 217. And God bless Massey and Khanna for doing this, right? But what happens is you're going to have this slow roll, legal, massive battle. The issue, though, that it does do, and I will give a little bit of credit here to Massey on this, it does keep it in the news. I mean, if this becomes a legal war to not release it, and if the next Democrat who wins that open seat needs to sign on to that discharge position, they should. And by the way, it highlights all the idiots, right, who've been protecting Trump from from this pedophile child rapist linkage. And it's just fantastic. So even though we'll get a redacted file and there's going to be 731 redactions with one name and you're going to think it's Trump. But I mean, everybody's going to say, oh, they're all Trump. He is no way out of this. There's no way out unless they use false equivalencies, propaganda, Jimmy Kimmel, Charlie Kirk. This is what they're doing. And God bless it. Almost said something worse. You get to a point that you're just like, are people that stupid? Yes. Are we that IQ limited as a country? Yes. Do we have problems with illiteracy? Yes. Do we have problems with critical thinking? Yes. Do we have problems with conspiracy theorists? Yes. Do we have a problem with people who think the supernatural entities and sky fairies are talking directly to their frontal lobe? Yes. That's the issue that you have. And again, that effect is happening. Everything you've talked about, Amy, and you brought up today, right, is there's no baseline of fact or baseline of ethics that we can reach back into right now. And I think that's why we're sometimes cast about and we're not quite sure how to approach it, because it's just an ethical rule of law destruction that's very hard for me and you, I think, to get our arms around right now because of how we were raised and the oaths we took.
Yeah, well, I look at it as we've been blessed to have leaders on both sides of the aisle who believe in America, believe in the promise of America, believe in our democracy. They may have had differences of opinion on tax policy and all that other stuff, but are fundamentally good, ethical people. And
Purged.
they surrounded themselves with decent public servants who were, had good background. They were experienced for the most part and ready to take on the job, whether it's national security advisor or secretary of defense or FTC commissioner, whatever, in the past. And now we have a second Trump administration. It didn't even really apply during the first one as much, because the first Trump administration, you had Secretary of Defense Mattis, and you had Esper, and you had Tillerson, and you had, decent public servants who were trying to work, John Kelly, who were trying to work within the system that we have, that believe in America and believe in the rule of law. And now you have a second Trump administration where he has filled these positions with unqualified people who are sycophants, who will do whatever he says, even if they know it is wrong. And you have a Congress that is the majority of which are Republicans who will follow him because they are fearful of him. So they know these, for example, the tariff policy is dumb. They know it's hurting their state. They know it's hurting their constituents. They know it's hurting businesses in their state and consumers and all of that stuff, and doing absolutely nothing for our national debt and hurting our manufacturing. And just they know this. They know that it hasn't happened in the last 80 years, these stupid tariffs. They know that there's no economist on the planet that thinks that they're good. And yet these members of Congress are willing to go along because they're fearful of Donald Trump and fearful of this president. And that, I think, is where we're at too. The rule of law just can't hold up when you have people in these positions who don't care about it.
They're high on access and power. And Amy, do we trust any Congress where there's congressmen and congresswomen who want to have hearings on UFOs that come out of the ocean? Probably not. And that's where we're at. I don't have anything. It's hard for me to keep because it's just I can't do it anymore. I just can't. I can't humor this bullshit.
I know it's very hard. We do have some quick shots to get to, though, because I want to get your take on a few things, some of which just maybe happened in the last 48 hours, and I just want to get. So first of all, you have done an endorsement on TV for Abigail Spanberger, running for governor of Virginia. If everybody has seen that or hasn't seen that, you should go and check it out. It's a pretty good commercial, right?
It's pretty good. I mean, when you have a star in it like me, it's hard not to, have a great commercial.
No, that's awesome. She's doing great work, and this is an important race in Virginia.
Oh,
Mikey
so
Sherrill
important.
also running in New Jersey for governor there. That's a super important race. Both of those women, I think, are badasses. They have both
I
served our country,
know them
Abigail in the
well.
CIA. Mikey is a fellow naval aviator.
That's right.
She was a Navy helicopter pilot. She is also amazing Naval Academy graduate. I can't say enough good things about both of them and their races. And, if you want to support somebody who cares about things like courage and honor and rule of law, both of those individuals do and would make great governors. So,
Well, I had to. I mean, her opponent is incapable, literally incapable of being a facts-based public servant, conspiracy theorist, and somebody who's literally down the line in a way that's hard to bring anybody back from. She's a rabbit hole candidate. So you have to support somebody that's on the rational and sane side these days.
yeah, good. Denver, will the government shut down on September 30th here?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Okay.
I think it'll be a short one because there'll be so much pressure. But I think it's going to be very difficult for the Democrats. They've never shown really any spine in any of these negotiations. And we remember we talked about pocket rescissions beforehand, when you vote on a budget and then the president just arbitrarily takes away the budget lines based on a pocket rescission. So it's going to be very difficult to have any good faith negotiations. But if there is a shutdown, I think it'll be fairly brief. I don't know if the Democrats can stick to their guns at all. And also, there could be a suspension of rules. We'll see what happens going down the line. But whatever happens, the Republicans will blame the Democrats one way or the other. And if the Democrats roll on it, they might be looking at the 26 midterms to keep their negatives down. So they got some things that they have to consider. I'm very interested to see the negotiations, but I do think you're going to see a brief government shutdown. Yes.
I mean, Republicans are the majority in the House and the Senate, so you would think that they could do this by themselves.
They think a shutdown helps them for the 2026 midterms if they can blame the Democrats. I'm just telling you, there's a political slant to this here that's going to be brutal to watch. Listen, I hope there's not a 3 or 4 day shutdown. And honestly, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do is how do you play this, right? And the American people are the leveraging chip and the ones that get hurt regardless of this negotiation.
Okay. There's an update. You remember the story about Lisa Cook? She was the
I do.
Yeah. So the president,
about one of the governors of the Fed.
Yes, the president accused her of mishandling her mortgage paperwork and claiming that she had 2 homes or something like that. Anyway, the Guardian did a review of her mortgage paperwork, and it came out, and she did, in fact, tell her lender that that other home was a vacation home. So she didn't do anything wrong at all.
What a surprise.
Yeah, I know. And, so it's like they're just making stuff up in order to fire who they want to fire at this point, which we all knew. But it's kind of like you see the headline, but then when somebody digs in on it a week later, it's like buried on the bottom of some page, like, oh, she didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, the media is complicit in this disinformation barrage and the metastasization of stupidity across our country. The media is completely complicit. And Amy, I'm sorry, I didn't know you like cameras and bird feeders. I feel a little sad right now. But what I'm saying is that there does seem to be more important things. Not that cameras and bird feeders aren't amazing, but I think there's, it's just incredible to me that the media, you're right, they'll report breathlessly on bullshit, right, and then bury the lead on facts.
Yeah. Well, one more thing, and then I want to get to one shout out here. Did you know, Denver, that at Costco, there are these champagne bottles that were sold here in Kentucky and in Ohio, I'm not sure about Virginia, that are like spontaneously exploding. And so Costco had to do a recall where they're trying to, tell people about these. Hey, if you bought one of these exploding champagne bottles, please get rid of it. Apparently, it's the let me read this. It's the Kirkland signature Prosecco Valdo Battadini or something. So if you bought the Kirkland,
which is Italian
Prosecco,
for dynamite.
I had to check. Right. I don't think we have bought any of that, but I'm just for all of our listeners who buy the Kirkland Prosecco, please, we
Be
care
safe out
about
there.
we care about your safety. I mean, I'm serious. Please make sure that you dispose of those.
I'm going to go buy some now. I think it's a great marketing thing.
I think they've taken them off the shelf, Denver. All right.
We've gone from bubbly to fragmentation. Buy Kirkland Champagne.
All right. Last thing. Shout out to Stephen Colbert, who won the Emmy.
Yeah, good for
on
him.
Sunday night.
Good
With
for
all the
him.
stuff that's happening. I just think that's great.
Yeah, I do too. Good for him. But I think he's going to do well. He's going to land on his feet. And again, when we come out of this darkness, which I'm not quite sure we will, but I hope we do. It's going to be nice to get on the other end of some more normalcy.
Well, I was actually, I interviewed Heather Cox Richardson on this show a few weeks ago. And I was listening to something that she was talking about just this week with all of the things that have been happening in our country. And she said, I've said for a long time it's going to get worse before it gets better. We're still in the getting worse part.
It's going to get worse before it gets worse.
But,
that's really
she's an optimist. I'm an optimist. I do think it's going to get better. We need to continue to support and be the leaders we want to see in this country with courage. And I think that's really important. So thanks for listening.
I think you're right. I mean, that it will get better at some point. I just think, listen, I think that for me, anyway, I don't want to get, too down the line of pessimism, but, sometimes it's that light at the end of the tunnel is an oncoming train, and that's what worries me. But anyway, here we are. And if you want to hear more of these exciting and positive messages, you should subscribe to Truth in the Barrel on YouTube. Make sure that you look at all of our social media channels, including Truth Social. So go to X and Blue Sky, go to Substack. We are everywhere. We are the metastasizers of truth and facts here on Truth in the Barrel. How'd you like that, Amy?
That's good. I'm not giving up anytime soon, folks.
Nope.
This is Truth in the Barrel. We're going to be around to make sense of what's going on. And thanks for listening, everyone.
See you later.